But ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Fox News's favorite Democratic last runner, my old boss, Marianne Williamson. I worked for her for a couple years and ran the mic at her lectures and sound and did stuff like that. Spent a good deal of time with Marianne, so you can trust that when I speak about Marianne, it's unlike when I'm talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., whom I have never met. That you can, I guess if someone goes, that was not my experience of him personally when I met him. Cool. In this particular case, though, I feel like you can kind of, you can, how close were you? I mean, I was like, for a period, I was like the Manny for her daughter. We played all the time. She was a lovely little girl. I'll dig up a picture of her and I when she was, of Emma and I when she was like 6. I mean, I did the Ethernet wiring at her house in Montecito. I fixed her computer when she was writing. Multiple times. I'm the guy who talked her into getting Marianne.com because the internet was going to be a big deal. Yeah. So let's see what she, and granted, I don't want to read anything into what, she's saying in this interview. She's on, what network is she on? Oh, what a shock. Fox News. Because that's where you go.
Voting underway in South Carolina. It's the Democratic primary going on there. The Republicans have their big primary that will pit Nikki Haley against Donald Trump and what...
By the way, Biden ran away with it.
They call for all the marbles on the table, at least for Nikki Haley. She's saying it's not the end of everything. But that's 3 weeks from now. This primary is happening today. And we have Marianne Williamson with us. And whatever your opinions of Marianne Williamson, I might...
Whatever your opinions of Marianne Williamson.
Point out here, for those who don't know, that long before Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was talking about taking on a fellow Democrat and a giant in his party, and Dean Phillips came along. He's not on the ballot, for example, in South Carolina. And Gavin Newsom seemed to be teasing a presidential run. There was Marianne challenging the president, taking on when he was a lot more popular. She's gotten a little more popular right now. She joined.
Yeah, not as popular as Nikki Haley, though, who's got, basically a solid, just slightly less than half of the Republican Party.
Just out of Nevada. Marianne, good to have you back.
Wait, she's here? Oh, dear.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You must feel like Rodney Dangerfield sometimes, like you get no respect.
You don't never say that to a woman.
You've been...
There's a lot of ways of saying women don't get enough respect without bringing Rodney Dangerfield in it. Whoa, I got to tell you.
There, and you've been slugging it out. You've been taking on the Democratic establishment. They've been predictably ignoring you. How does that feel?
Because they should. Just saying.
Feel?
Well, they've been more than ignoring me. They've been belittling me. Remember, as soon as I announced, the president's own press secretary on the presidential podium belittled me. I think the president actually owes me an apology. It's not about me. I'm a big girl. When you ask me how I feel, I can take it. I mean, you're running for president. There's a lot of heat in that kitchen. But it's an insult to every Democratic voter. It's an insult to everyone who is very interested in hearing other options than that which is anointed.
No, it's also... You could argue that it's insulting to Democrats everywhere who worked as hard as they did to get Joe Biden elected in the face of someone as awful as Donald John Trump. And you come in and think we have to primary this guy when he's actually doing what he said he would do, and very well. Just the lack of humility and the idea that it's somehow like it's a cakewalk for Democrats to get like the ego involved in thinking you can become elected as a Democrat president anyways takes so much fucking work and so much fight and so much focus. And in her case, the idea that she was like, well, fuck him. He's president. Fuck it. I could do it. Again, the fucking narcissism.
The candidacy of the president being anointed by the DNC.
He's not anointed. He's the current fucking president. He can do another term. He's capable. He's actually doing it. The idea that you would want to primary him just for your own fucking ego is the issue.
So no, that's not okay with.
Here's another idea. He's 80-something. You can't... Is it that you don't want to run against Kamala Harris maybe in a few years? Is that what it is? You'd rather run against Biden because you can call him an old white guy and get away with it and just kind of skate on it and use, misandry as a way of fucking with him. But when you actually have to run against Kamala Harris, you won't, over the same fucking issues and the same fucking policies, you won't have that arrow in your quiver.
Not because it hurts my feelings, but because this is not what the Democratic Party should be, and this is not what our democracy should be. Now, as far as respect is concerned, I feel some self-respect. That's how a system like that works. It wants you to lose all confidence in yourself, particularly as a woman, I think. I feel...
Particularly as a woman? You mean like what Hillary went through? And the faux-aggressive TYT viewers that held off their vote or didn't vote for president at all or didn't show up and through 75,000 votes over 3 states gave Donald Trump the Electoral College while he lost the popular vote? Same dumb motherfuckers who are talking this shit again?
Self-respect, and I know a lot of people respect the fact that I'm talking about the actual experience of the American people.
Okay. Marianne has been a multi-millionaire since the mid-90s. I helped move her from the apartment she had before Oprah decided to show her book. As Oprah's book club started with Marianne. From the apartment she had in West Hollywood to her something in the order of $6 million house in Montecito with a guest house and a giant fucking... It's a gorgeous place. Like, she's never looked back. Give me a break. What the fuck? She has no idea. No idea.
We have 39% of American people who say that they are regularly skipping their meals in order to pay their rent. We have half of Americans.
More than half of those people are Republicans who said that even though they were making less money under Trump, the economy is worse now when they're making more money and they're healthier under Biden.
Living paycheck to paycheck. We have Americans who are struggling to make it. And now with these retaliatory airstrikes, we are provoking Iran. So
we're provoking Iran? The Houthis fire on civilian ships, merchant marines from all over the world who never... None of them that are certainly currently serving in the military. They may have been in the military and in their own navies in their other countries, but they sure as fuck aren't now. So we're just supposed to sit back and let these motherfuckers die when their ships are sunk by these motherfuckers? And we're provoking?
Actually, I feel pretty good because I'm having the conversations that I think matter the most.
Well,
which is what? Let Iran sink a few ships with strangers you will never fucking meet? So what? You can wag a finger?
and you do keep those conversations going, Marianne. I mean, no offense, but the White House points to the latest jobs report, 353,000 more than the latest month, and the continued improvement in the economy as proof that you're wrong. What do you say?
What I say to that, Neil, is that you and I both know, and I think they know as well, that for 20% of Americans, and that does include me, those of us who have made it in the economy up to that top 20%, the economy is very good. What do they say, however, to the fact that half of all renters cannot afford their rent? 70% of Americans say...
No. Half of renters in the United States are not making rent. 50% of renters in the country are not in fear of eviction. Get the fuck out of here. They're complaining about the cost of it because that is the highest spike in the cost, and it doesn't seem to be going down anytime soon. You build your way out of that shit.
That they live with chronic economic anxiety.
Okay. Again, A big chunk of these are Republicans who were fine with the shitty hand-to-mouth stuff they were going through when Trump was president, because you got to suck it up for your man. But now that Biden's in office, they're like, oh is me. Seriously.
They're talking about economic data. I'm talking about human despair. And as far as that jobs report is concerned, how many of those jobs are jobs that somebody can support a family of four, even two on with?
A lot of them. That's the point. That's why he stood on a picket line.
Just one of those jobs. Remember, in the 1970s,
well, actually,
the average American could work one job.
Wages there, though, Marianne, did go up. In fact, much further than we thought. In fact, now people are worrying that they went up so much, the Federal Reserve might hold off on rate cuts. How do you feel about that?
What I feel about that is that the Federal Reserve is thinking about that top 20% a whole lot more than it's thinking about the permanent underclass that exists in this country.
Okay, and you're going, I'm counting on the people who identify as the permanent underclass to vote for you, even if they're not. Even if they're well-to-do, middle-class, white people in suburban areas who consider themselves Marxists, but either still live at home or having full ride payment for where they're going to college. Ugh.
We have an economic system now. When you look at the 1970s, Neil, we had a thriving
The 1970s?
middle class in this.
We had a thriving middle class in the 1970s? What happened to our when oil prices spiked in the 1970s? I'll tell you what, it gave us fucking Ronald Reagan. It's what it gave us. Good Lord.
This country. None of those economic data points.
Also, by the way, she lived in New York in the 70s because that's where her parents are from. I lived in Peeks Mill, fucking Kentucky. Don't talk to me about what the 70s were like. We had a dirt room in our house. We had like the floor was dirt. There was no flooring. We had 5 other rooms. They had wood. One of the rooms didn't have a fucking floor. We had to build it. Thank God my dad's an architect and I know my way around a hammer.
That you were mentioning point to the restoration of a middle class in this country.
The entire purpose is the rebuilding of the middle class. Jesus Christ, it's what he's been running on the entire time. Why the fuck do you think he's the first president to stand on a picket line?
When you have a majority of Americans who cannot afford to absorb a $500 unexpected.
All right. This lie floats around all the fucking time. Okay, I've mentioned this before, but the study that talks about this, first of all, it used to be 400, now it's 500. Now, people used to not be able to handle a $400 emergency expense. Now they can't handle a $500 emergency expense. And what it meant was, do they have cash on hand for that specifically? Do they have cash in the bank, savings that in the next month, all their bills are paid, and they have an extra $400 in cash for this particular emergency? Or do they have it, but it would make them feel weird, so they would put it on a credit card? Like the blossoming of what this means. Seriously, the company that did this study, you know what and I've mentioned this before, you know what they do? They sell emergency savings accounts to businesses for employees. They go to businesses and say, most of your employees can't handle, and they'll they spend all their money and they're a bunch of assholes and they don't have enough money if they have an emergency. So we think you should establish a special account for them, and then you can have that as a Benny when you're hiring people. And so we'll put some of their money in this account and it'll just sit there and we'll oversee it for you. And this is an emergency account. They can't take it out unless they have a provable emergency. That's the business they're in. That's what they do for a living. That company did this study. By the way, what happens to that money while it's sitting there and in between emergencies? All these employees all over the country putting their money in this emergency account. It just sits there. What do you think those folks are getting cash and putting it in an account in like a fucking box at the bank and just holding it there? Oh yes, and for a nominal fee, of course. Do you think it's just going to stay there, or whatever? Or do you think these guys operate as a secondary fucking bank and loan it out to other people in the upper 20%?
Expenditure? No, things are not going well. You have the highest level of poverty, including child poverty, of course, of any advanced nation. And that's the point of this campaign.
Because our standard is higher, and all the comparable countries that you're talking about have a much smaller population. Also, they always bring in Sweden and the Netherlands in general with this, who have oil specifically. Yeah. And then start looking into their immigration issues.
Acquiesce to a narrative.
Still using narratives, essentially, if you want to talk about narratives, still using narratives about the Netherlands and Northern Europe from fucking 2005.
That serves an elite, that serves a few, but at the expense of the many. That is not the visceral experience of the majority of Americans. This idea that everything's rosy is not the experience of the majority of American people.
First of all, nobody's saying everything's rosy. The world just went through a fucking pandemic. The fact that he's managed it this well, or that you can just assume it would have just worked itself out, fucking just, on autopilot, the American economy will just sort of right itself, and then we can, sprinkle some fucking magic on it.
People.
If it doesn't
My campaign is for them.
I understand. If it doesn't work out for you, would you support Joe Biden?
I will not do anything that I feel helps Donald Trump get back into the White House.
So if
that's a yes.
You had a choice between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I think you've said this before. You'd go to Biden, even though he's all but ignored you, attacked you, and the people around him have humiliated you.
I'm a big girl. Okay. This is not about my being humiliated. You know what I mean? This is about our country.
Neil, my entire campaign is humiliating. So the external humiliation has nothing to do with anybody else. Like, believe me, it's plenty humiliating. Have you met my staff? I'm kidding.
The state of our country, and I'm sure you share that with me. We're grown-ups here.
Okay.
No, don't be too sure. Neil Cavuto plays a grown-up on television, but he isn't one.
Yeah, they have treated me worse than I would have expected, but that's not what.
No, they haven't. You've all but called him Genocide Joe. So the fact that they've just gone shoo is not an attack.
Makes me cry. What makes me cry is to see 600,000 people who are homeless every night. What makes me cry is the fact that we're provoking Iran right now.
We're not provoking Iran. We're literally not provoking Iran. We are not. We're not provoking Iran right now. Iran has specifically held back from Iran went, just so you know, after we attacked those the Iran proxies in Syria and Iraq, remember that, like a couple days ago, where we really hit those guys and the Houthis or whatever? The Iranians put out a statement that no Iranians were hurt in the attacks. You know what? You think they did that to fucking brag? No, they did that to protect their flank from their own people. To go, look, we don't have to attack America. They didn't actually hit any of our people. They hit those fuckers. Those aren't your fuckers. Our people are over here. America didn't kill any of our people. That's not bragging rights. They're saying that so that their own people don't demand retribution. The Iranians are like, yeah, they didn't hit any of our folks, so we don't have to do anything. We're not provoking them. They don't want to be provoked. As a matter of fact, the State Department, Biden, and even the fucking mullahs are like, they're like, we don't like each other, but we don't want to go to war.
What makes me cry is what's happening to all of those people in Gaza right now. What makes me cry.
Okay, let me cover this one more time. If you believe the death toll that Hamas puts forward, which you should not, but if you do, and you go all in and you say 30,000 people have been killed, half of them children, and all of them civilians, not a single fighter amongst them. It's so weird how the Israelis are in there firing machine guns, and they're in this, one-to-one urban warfare, but they're not hitting any of the guys with fucking rocket launchers. They just miss those guys and immediately hit some dude who's like fucking selling food on the fucking corner. Let's just say you believe all that shit. Which is garbage. Understand this. The most densely populated place on Earth, 2.4 million people, in an area smaller than Manhattan, and fewer people, fewer human beings, even if you trust their numbers, which you shouldn't, have been killed than bombs dropped. There is no way you indiscriminately bomb an area that packed with people and have less than 500,000 dead. Not possible. And does anybody think that Hamas is undercounting the dead? Anybody? It's gross. It's fucking gross. You don't have to agree with everything that Netanyahu's doing. He's a fucking asshole. That's not the point. The idea that you'll just lay out a fucking blood libel on Jewish people and Israelis or Arab Israelis as if that whole country is all in on indiscriminate flooding with bombs and destroying everybody, and yet in an area, again, smaller than Manhattan, that contains 2.4 million people, the most densely populated stretch of Earth, places on Earth, where they've destroyed like a fifth of the buildings there, and still only, even like I said, even if you believe the most bloated number, there are fewer human beings killed than bombs dropped. And that includes like street to street fucking fighting. Check my math. I'm dead serious. Can I explain her accent? No, I can't, because she had a British accent when she lived in England for a little while, and I think she lived in Michigan for a little while after that. She's got good speaker voice, but you get what I'm saying. So the idea, by the way, and a reminder for those people saying ceasefire now. When your heart's in the right place, I understand that your empathy has been weaponized by some awful people. But let me explain something to you. There was a ceasefire. Did you know that? There was, and I'm not talking about the humanitarian pause for the hostages. There was a ceasefire. Since 2018, there was a ceasefire. It stopped on the morning of October 7th. Hamas broke it on October 7th. And on October 8th, Yahweh Sinwar said, we'd always planned to break it. It was bullshit. You understand what I'm saying? And then they broke the temporary ceasefire. They broke that one too. Again, there is no situation where what's going on in Gaza can be described as indiscriminate bombing, because there's just no fucking way you would, in any situation like that, you couldn't indiscriminately bomb fucking Las Vegas, and like one casino, and have that many people, and not have half a million dead in that area. If ever, like during a crowded convention, not fucking possible. Does that make sense? So the idea that she's like, oh dear, the people in Gaza, for one thing, like innocent civilians, abso-fucking-lutely. But the idea that they're all innocent civilians, that the actual men holding rifles and holding rocket launchers and firing on shit and posting their rape videos on fucking Telegram are somehow, innocent civilians who are being caught up in something bigger than themselves, can go fuck themselves. That's garbage. Stop. None of these assholes calling for a ceasefire right now were calling for a cease rape on October 7th. Half of them were cheering it on. So piss off. It like, and this this fucking, it just grosses me out. In any conflict where there are two sides, and if one of the sides put down their weapons, the fight would be over. And if the other side, if they put down their weapons, they would be over. I'm for the side that would end up being at peace. And in this particular case, it's the Israelis. And in Ukraine and Russia, it's the Ukrainians. If the Ukrainians drop their weapons, the Russians would fucking kill them all. They've already said so. Same thing with the Israelis. Hamas has said so. And here's the thing. I don't mind that you care about Gazans. You fucking should. That's important. But if you just kind of like October 7th, I mean it's sad, but here, then you're selling something. You're not actually giving a fuck. It's a lie. The warmonger is the one who sides with the group that says, we don't rest until they're all dead. Whichever group is saying we don't rest, and I don't mean one person, one individual in the cabinet, or two fucking people, or three people at a meeting or something. No. I mean the charter. The Republican charter is anti-choice. The Democratic charter is pro-choice. That's a difference. There's no fucking uniparty when it comes to that stuff. We found that out in the election. It does matter. And by the way, she knows this when it comes to Biden and Trump. But when it comes to Israel and Gaza or any of the other things, she's like, too much noise, you're going to spill my latte. Fuck off. Other than that, I have no opinion.
Are much bigger things than whether or not my feelings get hurt by the DNC or anyone else.
Well, you say you're a big girl, but I've met you a number of times. You're actually a very thin and fit person, so
What a weird, creepy, fucked... Neil, shut the fuck up, man. Ugh.
I think I understand.
What'd you say? I'm sorry, I didn't
understand
hear
you now. No, you say you're a big girl, but I've met you. You're actually very thin and fit. So maybe you're making a metaphor there, but we'll...
Yes, you specifically making a metaphor there, but don't forget I can toss my hair. Oh, Neil. This is where you go, it's a metaphor, Neil. Don't make a fat joke when I'm fucking talking about how to handle things. Good Lord.
See, Marianne, very good seeing you again.
Oh, it's always good, and thank you for having me. I so appreciate it. I wish you a beautiful day.
Well, I enjoy all points of view. Marianne Williamson, thank you very much.
No, he does not. Stop it. For the record, Neil Cavuto doesn't give a rat fuck about any policy ideas that Marianne Williamson has, nor does he actually care, actually want any of them to make it. Let's be abundantly clear. The only reason he brings her on is the same reason everybody on Fox does, which is she will strategically and regularly shit on Joe Biden and the Democratic Party and say they are anti-democracy, which gives them a soundbite that Donald Trump and other people can feed around going, the Democrats don't even like democracy. That's what it is. That's why you're there. So you can either come in there, know that's what they're going to do, and be very specific about when you're on there, not do the bash Biden, bash Dems shit that they want out of you, but to talk about your policies. That's what you do. If anybody's ever going on a hostile station in the future and you're going to run for office, and I hope some of you do, when you know that they're bringing you on just to shit on your own side, don't take the bait. The coverage might help you, but it only helps you if they know what the fuck you're for, not fuck the DNC. That's not a thing. That's not helpful. That doesn't actually build anything. Nobody watching Cavuto show is going to fucking vote for Marianne Williamson. And nobody who votes for Marianne Williamson is going to be impressed that she was on Cavuto's show. I am not wrong about this. All right. Just for the record. There you go. Yeah. Buttigieg is a great example of this. Go on there, and so does Gavin Newsom. He's fantastic. If you go on there, it's to fucking curb stomp all their dumb ideas and make them deal with the fact that you know what you're talking about and you actually have policy that will actually work out, and they have to go, fuck, you're kind of right. Other than that, I have no opinion.
Democratic presidential candidate Marianne Williamson.
Hi, Brian
Hi, Brian Kilby.